All right. So, hi everyone. My name is Colleen, and I am the graduate assistant for Career Services. I'll be taking you through Handshake and how to create resumes and cover letters today. So, to start, I'll go through and tell you what Career Services has to offer. So, for those of you who have never been to our office before, we help students with everything career related. So, getting your resume and cover letter up to date, getting on LinkedIn early on is a really great way to start building your network. We also help students for search for positions like on-campus positions, off-campus positions, internships. We help students find all different kinds of things. Also being prepared for our career fair, which will be happening September 27th. I'll tell you a little bit more about that as well. And we also have different appointments like mock interviews. And then once you are an alum through OU, you'll have access to our services for life. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so next I'm going to take you through Handshake, how to search for different on-campus jobs, any internships that you might be interested in. I'll show you how to find different events like the career fair. I'm also going to show you how to schedule an appointment and also touch on our career studio that we have as well. And then I'm also going to show you how to find resources on Handshake. So let me share my screen. Okay, hopefully you all can still see my screen and see that I'm logged into Handshake. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Handshake, it's our job search and networking platform for OU students. So OU is the only one that can use Handshake. Well, there's different handshakes for different universities, but employers on here are specifically looking for OU students and alum. So under the jobs tab, you can narrow down your job search. So these are jobs that are all over the country. So if you were, let's say you were graduating and you were moving to Arizona, you can look for positions specifically with the Arizona zip code. You would just need to include that in the filter for location. If you're looking for an internship specifically, we have an internship filter. We also have different filters for full-time, part-time, the different job roles, different industries that you might be in, employers that you're looking at. There are some students that want to work in a nonprofit, and some students want to work as an engineer at GM. So you can always add and remove these filters as you see fit, and then click on show results. But I also want to show you as well for on-campus positions. If you were to click on campus, it'll narrow down the positions that are currently available on campus that you can apply to. And for example, some students are work study. So if you are a work study student and you are looking for a work study on campus position specifically, then you can click on the work study filter. And then it'll narrow down and show you the positions that are available for work study students. And it's nice too, because once you, like, let's say you're looking at on-campus positions and you have to go to class and you don't have time necessarily to apply right away, you can always click this button right here, which will include it in your saved jobs for later on. So once you click on your saved jobs, it'll show you all the positions that you want to be applying for, along with what's required for the position as well. If anybody has any questions too, as I'm going through, feel free to unmute and ask, or send them in the chat. Looks like there's a chat. Yes, great question, Zach. So this is being recorded. Stephen will have that information and be able to send it to you later on. Okay, so then, you're welcome. So then if we go back to Career Center and we want to look over the different resources. So if we click on resources, this will be under the resource library. So under Handshake, if you were to, for example, look over resumes and cover letters, we have different PDFs and different resources for a multitude of different areas. So we have like our resume writing guide. This details everything there is to know about writing resumes, from the formatting to the spacing and everything in between, because none of this information is intuitive. It just comes with having the resources available and the time and practice creating them. There's also different resources for your career communities, which is pretty cool. So, for example, let's say that one of you maybe is a psychology student. You can go under the CAS resources and scroll all the way down to where there's resume samples by major. So you can always look at one of these samples based on your major to get an idea of what your resume could potentially resemble, or to kind of get inspiration on how to format it. So we have those resources on here as well. And then we also have different appointments. So as you can see, I've had many appointments, career services, super, super helpful. So if you've never been to our office before, I definitely suggest clicking on first time visitor. So you can be, paired with a career ambassador, kind of go over some of the basics, how to create a resume, update your resume, and so forth. But once you are, past that step and you feel good about the process, then you can definitely select your specific school. So if you're a CAS student, SCCS, SBA, whatever it may be, you'll select that. And then let me zoom in a little bit here for you guys. So for the different appointment types, we have alumni career coaching. So don't need to worry about that just yet. I just wanted to mention that as well, because a lot of students are under the impression that, once they graduate, they won't be able to use our services anymore. And that is not the case. We have services for students for life. Like, we've worked with alum 15 years after they graduated because they want to go in a completely different direction. So no worries whatsoever. We also have our career fair, which I'll show you where to find that too. So we have our career fair every semester. It's very popular and heavily attended in the fall semester. We have 80 plus employers that will attend the career fair, and it's super, super beneficial to attend, even if you're not currently looking for anything. But if you are currently looking for maybe an internship, let's say, if you're a business student or an engineering student, the timeline is typically very early on. So a lot of students will look or come to the career fair to look for an internship for the following summer. So it starts really early. So it's best to get prepared ahead of time, come to our office, work on your elevator pitch, talk about different employers that you might be interested in interning with, and so on. We also have appointments in resume and cover letter review. And then we also have appointments in gaining career related experience, which is focused more on the internship search strategy. We also have appointments in job search. So if you're looking for part-time, full-time role, wherever it may be, we're happy to help you with that search as well. We also have appointments in mock interview, LinkedIn, social media, and then other career questions. So with other career questions, it can be about anything really with your major. If you have questions about, maybe you're a double major, maybe you have a major in Spanish and literature, and you're wondering what some of the available career options are for you, definitely come and visit our office and talk with our career consultants who are experts in your fields of study. And also other things too that we may not have knowledge about or think of at the time, things like salary negotiation. A lot of us don't have exposure to that early on, so our career consultants can help with that as well. I'll show you one more thing before we talk about resumes. So under the events tab, we have all of our different workshops. Like, these are the ones that I'm doing over the summer. But if you click on employer, usually if it loads, okay, we have our fall career fair and engineering and IT career fair. So if you click on fall career fair, it'll allow you to register. So I'm already registered for it, as you can see. But once we have our employers that are currently, filling out the process of attending the fair, getting that all set and ready to go, they'll appear on the left-hand side here for employers. And what's really cool is that once these employers are listed on Handshake, you can click on See More Employers. And from there, similar to the job search that I showed you under the Jobs tab, you can add filters for the different employers that are attending the career fair to see who's hiring specific majors, class standings, internships, part-time, full-time, whatever you're looking for. And I think that's all I'm going to show you on Handshake for right now. Does anyone have any questions about that? You can always feel free to unmute or type it in the chat if you have any questions about Handshake. If not, I will move right along into resumes. Okay, I will move right along into resumes, but like I said, if anyone has any questions, feel free to shout them out. Okay, so next we're going to go into resumes, and then we're also going to be talking about cover letters. So what is a resume? So a resume is a document that highlights all of these different experiences. So the goal of a resume is to get you an interview. So a great way to look at it is a great cover letter gets your resume reviewed, a great resume gets you the interview, and a great interview gets you the position. Not every organization or business is going to require a cover letter, but I'll get into that a little bit later on. So when you're creating a resume, you want to ask yourself these following questions. You know, do you have the experience related to the position? If so, how can you format that to resemble or, you know, be highlighted on your resume? What does your employment history look like? Do you have any other experiences? Maybe do you have leadership experience being on campus, or do you have related experience by volunteering in a certain area or organization? Okay, so this is what the outline of a typical or standard resume looks like. I'm going to go through all of these different areas, so we'll take some time to answer any questions that you all may have, but this is what the standard outline of a resume looks like. So to start with a resume, we have your header, which includes your name and your contact information. So with the header, you want to make sure that your name is typed out and it's the largest font on your resume because you want to be able to draw the employer's eye right away. You also want to be able to have your OU email showing unless you're about to graduate, because once you graduate, you won't have your OU email. So we want to make sure that you're using your professional email. We also want to have your phone number. And then with address, a lot of students have varying comfort levels with address. So if you choose to include it on your resume, you're welcome to. Some students choose not to because it can also lead to unintentional bias on the employer part. So let's say you were, you know, if you live in Rochester and you were applying for maybe a position out in Lansing, they might see your resume and think like, oh, they don't want to drive all the way out here just for this, when in reality you're more than willing to. So that's kind of something to keep in mind. So instead of having an address, a lot of students are choosing to use their LinkedIn URL. LinkedIn's also a great job search and networking tool. Highly recommend creating one. I'll be talking a bit about that in the next presentation, which I believe is next week. So feel free to join that one as well. So after your header and your contact information, next is an optional area on your resume. It's called the objective statement. So this provides a narrow scope or focus about what you're looking for, along with the transferable skills that you have that are related to the job posting. So this is in third person, so no I or me statements. And you also want to include some soft skills. So soft skills are skills that you can improve over time. So these are skills like leadership, time management, organization, things like that. Typically, these are in the job post itself. So like if you were to look at a position and they have listed certain qualifications of certain skills that they look for in an applicant, then you can reflect that in your objective statement. And then, wait, let me move this down here. So this is an example. There's no one right way to create an objective statement either. It encompasses more of that formula or of that specific information. So an example is high achieving junior studying communication, seeking a position as a peer mentor for the Center of Multicultural Initiatives to apply strong communication and leadership skills. So it's a narrowed focus about what skills they have and what they're looking for exactly. You can also make your objective statement more broad, I guess you can say. So, for example, if you were to have something like this first part here, you could always have something like high achieving junior studying communication, seeking to utilize skills in communication and leadership for marketing internship this summer or something like that. So it can be a little bit more open-ended if you didn't want to change your objective statement for every position that you're applying for. Okay, how are we doing? Everyone's so quiet. Do we have any questions? Anything that's confusing?
There was.
Jordan, hey.
Wait,
Oh
you can
no,
hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, so there's a template for all of this on Handshake, right?
So that's a great question, Jordan. I'm really glad that you mentioned that. So typically with resumes, we recommend that students stray away from templates because they're so difficult to add or remove information from. I used to be a template person before I started working here, and I would get so frustrated because I'm super particular about spacing. But when it comes to your resume, it's actually great to make your resume from scratch, either on a Word document or a Google document, so you can get the formatting to how you want it to be. And also, another pro tip is that when you are creating your resume, to start with your margins already adjusted. So instead of the standard 1 inch that typically is involved in like a regular Google Doc or Word doc, you'll change it so it's 0.5 all the way around. Does that answer your
Okay.
question?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Cool. Great question. Does anyone else have any other questions? No? Okay. Well, cool. Next, we have education. So, the education is an example of what it would look like down here. So, you're going to have the school name, the city and state that, the school is located in. You also want to specify your degree title. So, a lot of students will put just like psychology or they'll put down engineering, whatever it may be, but you want to have your official degree title. And if you don't know exactly what this is, that's okay. It would be located on your MySale. So your education section can also include any minors, any extracurricular activities you may be involved in on campus. If you were on the dean's list, honors college, that can also go under your education section as well. You can always have something like honors college or honors college member. And then you would also have your expected graduation date. This doesn't have to be set in stone either. This can always, fluctuate based on the amount of classes that you take and whatnot. It just gives the employer a tentative idea of when you'd be graduating. And then if you also want to include your GPA, that would be cool too. That's also an idea. Some students like to, some students don't. Completely up to you. So after education, another optional section on your resume, similar to your objective, if you want to include it, is called related courses. So these are your higher level major classes that you've completed. So typically like 2000 level and above courses. So, for example, like a communication student, if they wanted to have a list of related courses, they could always have organizations or what was it? I'm thinking back to my undergrad. So if they had a section, let's see, common organizations, I think women in leadership. Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember all of them, but you all understand what I'm saying. So that is an idea if you want to have related courses, or if you want to and or if you want to have related course projects. So these are projects that you may have done for a semester. Maybe you did a group project that you're really proud of and want to highlight. That can also go on your resume as well. That's where a lot of students will have their related experiences to what they're applying for. So if they were applying for a marketing internship, having a related course to second or section called or focused on their marketing classes, and then course projects related to marketing is an idea of how that can be formatted. Ooh, chat. Great question. Okay, hi Jacob. Should we be putting high school experience if we're at Oakland? That's a really great question. I'm so glad you asked that. So when it comes to putting your high school information, we suggest that students do not include it under their education section unless you're a freshman. Typically, when you're a freshman student, you're starting out, you don't necessarily have all these different experiences and things to put on your resume just yet. So you can leave it if you are a freshman, but after your first year, it's recommended that you only have your OU current education. And then that reminds me too of another area on your education that students are often wondering about. Some students, like let's say you're coming from Macomb Community College and you didn't earn a degree at Macomb, but you transferred credits. That doesn't need to go on your resume. That can only go on your resume if you earned a degree there. So hopefully that is helpful. Any other questions? Okay, maybe not right now, but like I said, just let me know. Feel free. Okay. So the next part of your resume will very much depend on your own individual experiences. So some students will have leadership experience. Maybe they were the president of student congress at their high school. Maybe they'll have volunteer experience out in the community, internship experience, work experience. I know a lot of you are probably in different years or class standing. Some of you might be juniors, some of you might be freshmen. So depending on your experiences, you want to choose the experiences that relate to these. So you can decide based on your transferable skills. So maybe you had an internship where you had a lot of interpersonal communication skills and you're applying for a position that requires that. You can also look at the different tasks and duties that you performed, what you think is going to be most applicable to an employer, and so on. Within your experiences, you're also going to have bullet points, also known as achievement statements. So this is the formula that we recommend students utilize when creating bullet points. And well, students and alum we recommend to utilize. So you would start it with an action verb. So what did you do? What did you perform? What were some of those skills that you were using, like those interpersonal skills we talked about, or soft skills? How did you do it and why? And then if there was a result, oftentimes the result is more numerical based. So if you have access to that kind of information, great. If not, don't worry about it. Just focus more on what you did and how or why you did what you did. And then, yep. So here's an example. So if you're wondering, for example, if you worked on campus and you're like, okay, what did I do as a student assistant for housing? Okay, I put together hall programs. Okay, so, what did you do? I organized them. Awesome. How did you do it? You coordinated with resources on campus. Okay, what was the point of putting together those hall programs? To engage students in on-campus resources. Okay, so then it's about splicing it together. So the final bullet point would be organized hall programs by coordinating with various Oakland University departments to connect residents with resources on campus. Hopefully that makes sense of how to create a bullet point. Sometimes the more information a bullet point has, the better it'll come across, because you want to make sure that who's ever reading your resume is able to comprehend and understand the amount of work that went into what you were doing. So I also want to mention too, when it comes to resumes, it's terrible. I know, I wish it wasn't this way. But an employer spends an average of 6 seconds reading a resume. so it's very quick. So you want to make sure that you have those relevant or related experiences featured on your resume. And typically with bullet points as well, you want to have 3 to 5 bullet points per experience. So if you have, let's say you, I don't know, maybe volunteered at a soup kitchen or something, that could maybe have 3 bullet points. And then maybe you have work experience at Target, that could also have 3 to 5 bullet points per experience. Do we have any questions so far? Maybe? No? Okay, well, I'll keep looking at the chat in case we do. Here's a list of different action verbs in that resume writing guide that I was showing you all earlier on Handshake. Also has this wonderful large list of action verbs to choose from. So you would start your bullet points with these action verbs to help avoid repetition on your resume, because a lot of students will oftentimes use like assisted or worked, over and over again. So this kind of provides some different action verbs as well. Okay, so another optional portion of your resume is the activities and honor section. So honors can be its own section. This can also be included under your education section as a bullet point. It can also be used as leadership or related experience too. And there's also a skill section that you can have as well. Again, optional, your resume is whatever you choose to make it to be. So with the skills section, these are specifically focused on hard skills. And what I mean by hard skills are skills that you can prove on the spot. So skills like these: computer language, any spoken languages, certifications. If you do choose to include a language, first off, very cool. Bilingual is amazing. If you have, let's say, maybe you know French, but you aren't fluent in it, that's completely okay. You would just have a bullet point that says like familiar with written and verbal French. Or if you do have a second language and you are fluent in it, like German or something, you would have a bullet point that says fluent in written and verbal German. So you're showing what you have expertise in, because some students are only able to speak another language, or they're only able to write or read another language, and so on. So these would go in their own skill section or throughout your resume, sprinkled throughout. And then soft skills like these are reserved only for your objective statement and achievement statements, also known as bullet points. Okay, so like I said, an employer spends an average of 6 seconds reading a resume. So you want to make sure that somebody is able to look over your resume before you submit it. You also want to make sure that your resume is limited to 1 page. There's this, I guess you could say, misconception that your resume can't be more than 1 page, and it definitely can. However, it's like a catch-22 situation where you want to make sure if your resume is more than 1 page that it's only based on the relevant experiences. So for example, I just worked with a psychology student, so I keep going back to the psychology example, but if you were a psychology student and you've had like 3 internships in like the clinical mental health field, and you're applying for a therapist position, but it doesn't all fit on 1 page, it can go onto a second page. It just has to fill half or more of that second page. But like I said, since an employer does spend so little, looking over resumes very quickly, it's best to have it targeted to 1 page. And then I see we have a question. Okay. Hi, Jacob. Okay, how should we format for work experience when we work 2 different positions at the same company? Ooh, great question. So first an internship and then a legal assistant. I know I have a resume in mind that has an example of that. If not, I can get your email and send it to you, because it shows how you would format it. It's hard to explain verbally. I'm such a visual learner, so I will definitely send you a sample of how that would look for sure. Yeah, anytime. So then with your resume too, you want to make sure that it's consistent, spacing, everything is all formatted correctly. You don't want to use any I statements, so only third person. You also want to tailor your resume to the position that you're applying for. An example of this, so I'm in the Master's in Counseling program at OU. I'm in the dual program for school counseling and clinical mental health. If I were applying for a school counseling position, I would have all of my school experiences working with students and kids focused on that resume. If I was applying for more of the clinical mental health side with counseling, I would have more of my one-on-one practicum experiences, things like that. So there would be different resumes for different things. You also want to make sure that your resume looks nice and appealing. And it's important too, if you're emailing your resume, to have it sent as a PDF, because sometimes people don't have Word, they might not have Google Doc, they might not have access to certain files. And I think pretty sure standard across the board is a PDF file. And then make sure if you are printing that, most places are like virtually sending it, but that it prints correctly. Okay. Before we move on to cover letters, does anybody have any questions about resume, questions about handshake, anything like that that I can clarify for you? Okay. Like I said, if not, always jump in. Oh, yay, Jamina. Oh, you're good. Okay. Thanks for saying something. Feel free at any point, you guys, to just unmute and talk. Sometimes I get sick of hearing my own voice, so feel free to jump in at any point. Okay, so next we're gonna go over cover letters. So what is a cover letter? So like I said earlier, cover letter, then resume, then interview, then getting the position. So not every position or organization that you apply to is going to require a cover letter. Some will, some won't. Some will just want your resume, some will want your resume portfolio. So it all just depends. What makes a good cover letter? You want to make sure that you are always tailoring your cover letter and experiences to whatever you're applying for. With the cover letter too, we have our cover letter guide. So that would be under, the resources tab that I showed you where to find that resume writing guide. We also have our cover letter guide on there. It's a lifesaver. Cover letters can be tricky too because you don't necessarily want to repeat everything that's already on your resume, but you do want to expand upon different things. So, for example, if you were applying for, let's see, if you were a finance student and you were applying for like Borg Warner or something, and you had a list of related courses on your resume, maybe one of those courses is like finance in a certain area. You could always kind of expand upon what you learned from that course and how it would be applicable to that company. And also with cover letters too, you want to make sure that you are framing your content in a way of what you can do for the employer, not necessarily what they can do for you. Any questions so far? No? Okay. Oh, yay, question. Oh, direct message. Okay, but send me linked information. Oh, yes, for sure, Mackenzie. Yeah, I will definitely be happy to chat with you about that program for sure. It's a great program. So next, we'll be preparing how to write a cover letter. So when you are wanting to write a cover letter or it requires a written cover letter, you want to make sure that you are able to look at the job posting to see if the person's name of like whoever posted it is on there. And you also want to make sure that it fits with your own career goals as well. And you want to be sure that you really want to apply for this position because cover letters take a little bit of time, because you're always writing a cover letter to the specific place or institution, whereas a resume can be a little bit more general, whereas cover letters are specific to whoever you're applying for. So you would start it. Your resume should have the same heading and contact information at the top of your resume. So you would just copy and paste your name and contact information from your resume and include that directly on your cover letter. You also want to make sure that you include the person, whoever posted, or the name that's attached to the job or position that they're on here, and they have their title. Oftentimes, it's very irksome, but some positions will not include like a contact name or anything like that. That's okay. You would still have the company name, their address, and if you do have their name, you would say like, "Dear Mr. Smith," or you would say, "Dear hiring manager," if that's not readily available. Okay, so cover letters as well are also a targeted 3 to 4 paragraphs. I like to tell students, just to make it easier on yourself, have an opening paragraph, middle paragraph, and conclusion. So the opening paragraph includes why you're writing for the position or what you're applying for specifically. So an example could be something like, "It's with great enthusiasm that I apply for the maybe engineering internship at Ford. You know, how did you learn of the position? I learned of this position through Oakland University's handshake system, or if anybody referred you specifically. So, for example, if maybe your professor reached out to you and was like, "Hey, this would be a really great fit for you," then you can name drop your professor specifically. And like I said, you want to make sure that you're framing your cover letter of what you can do for them, not what they can do for you. I worked with a lot of students who will have like, "This would be a really great experience," in my cover letter. And it's like, yes, that's great. That's true. But we got to make sure that we're, showcasing the transferable skills that you have so that they're able to identify those. So you want to also make the company feel special. And students will do this by researching. So if you were applying for a position at Borg Warner or something like that, you can always look at their website, see what different things they have going on. Maybe they've had an event in a certain area that, the proceeds are donated towards a charity that you feel really close to. You could always mention that as well. Something just to kind of tie it in. So then after your introduction paragraph, this is where you go into the body of your cover letter. So this is where you go through all of your qualifications and achievements and certain related experiences, just to kind of add a little bit more detail. And you can also include different experiences that might not be on your resume directly, or expanding upon a little bit more, like those related courses. You also want to mention how or what you can bring to the position. So like your vision, the skills, how they would benefit from hiring you. And then the closing paragraph, super easy, best part of a cover letter. It's super universal, can be very, very similar or the same throughout all cover letters. This is where you say something like, "I look forward to discussing more with you in an interview setting. I can be reached by phone number or email. Thank you for your time and consideration." And then you would put "sincerely." And then, so with your name, some students have access to this, and I envy them because I'm not tech savvy whatsoever. But if you're able to upload your actual signature to your cover letter and include that on there under "sincerely," amazing. If not, if you're just like me, just have a different kind of font that looks like a signature in like a cursive like or italicized font, and then have your type name right below it. So this is an example of a cover letter for a student that is applying to be a peer mentor for CMI. I know that our cover letter also has like 4 or 5, or cover letter guide, sorry, has 4 or 5 different examples that you can definitely refer to. That's featured right on our handshake. And also, fun fact, I wrote this cover letter a few years ago in my undergrad when I was applying to be a peer mentor. So I always like to throw that out there as well. Does anyone, let's see, Any questions about cover letters or anything I've talked about today?
So cover letters aren't required, right? It's just some that like if they list that you need it, you have to put it.
Right. So typically the resume is always going to be required, but cover letters, it just depends on the employer. Great question, Jordan. Do we have any other questions, other clarifications? Okay. Well, let me also put my email in the chat in case anybody wants to reach out directly. Oh, it went directly to Mackenzie. Let me see everyone in the meeting. Okay. So it's cwilliams23@oakland.edu. I'm always accessible over email. And I also wanted to mention on here as well to follow our social media. We're always posting our different events that we have going on, updates. We also have our Career Studio. So, Career Studio is run by our Career Ambassador team, which are the team of ambassadors that I supervise. For the summer, I will be running it. So, definitely come and hang out with me. We can work on your resume, work on your LinkedIn, getting ready for an interview, whatever you have going on. I am running that all summer long. There's no appointment needed for that. So the hours for that are between 1 and 4 on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays. Or, like I showed you earlier, if you want a specific appointment for a certain time, whatever it may be, that can also be scheduled directly on Handshake. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'll hang around for a little bit if anybody has any other questions, but I appreciate you all being here today. Oh, someone has a question in the chat. Gina. Oh, okay, great question, Jacob. Okay. Jacob asked, should we be putting references in either, or should we save those until after the interview process? Wonderful question, Jacob. So when it comes to references, this is something that you don't want to be including on your resume. You would have that as a separate sheet, and that is something that you would tell the interviewer in the interview setting that you have references available upon request. Cool. Well, I hope this was helpful for you guys. You're welcome.
So what do you mean by like references?
So references are like past employers, past professors, whoever can speak to your character, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, so like if you had a previous employer or supervisor, let's say you're applying for a grad program, you need like a letter of recommendation, that's where those come in. Thanks, everyone. And then, okay, we have Mackenzie. Okay, people give me emails.